All right, hi everyone. Day 2 of this conference is really nice, and thanks for coming to our presentation. I'm Glide, I'm the product lead for Signet.
I'm Chris, lead engineer of Signet.
And if you don't already know, Signet is the multi-sig solution from Talisman. We're going to show you a lot of the features today through a bunch of live demos with lots of the different parts of Signet. But before I dive into the nitty-gritty detail, I first want to talk about what do we mean when we say multi-sig. So Signet is based on the proxy and multi-sig palettes. And so we have a concept in Signet called the vault. And so the vault is a unit of the proxied account and the multi-sig. So the proxied account by default is a pure proxy, so seedless, but we also support importing non-pure proxies as well, if that's how you have the existing setup. Oh yeah, you're gonna dive in. Okay, so, and then the other part, just before we go into the demo, is the multi-sig. So multi-sig is derived account based on the signers and the threshold. And so this unit of the vault is where the multi-sig has proxy to the proxied account. And so we link these together. And this is what it looks like in Signet. So you see up here, we have the vault address, which is the proxied account. And then below here, we have all of the multi-sig details, so signers, threshold, and you can see the multi-sig address here. In terms of the settings, this structure allows us to change the multi-sig configuration, so we can add, remove signers, update the threshold as well. This will, because of the multi-sig address is derived, it will give us a new multi-sig address. But through Signet, we abstract away a lot of the complexity, and you know, if we review and approve that transaction, then that will establish the, in this case, an any proxy back to the proxied account. So because we think of multi-sigs like this, we think multi-sigs are awesome. So they're seedless if you use the pure proxy. And this helps us avoid problems of externally owned accounts and vulnerabilities in private key sharing. We have transaction approvals, so whether it's 2-factor authentication, 3-factor authentication, or beyond. The proxied account allows us to establish the same account over time, and so we have the ability to have identity on the proxied account, store funds, etc., and develop a history that we don't have to change if we change the multi-sig configuration. And then we also have flexible security as we go. So we can start with a 2 of 2 style multi-sig with 2 signers and a threshold of 2. Maybe as the account becomes more important, so holds more assets, the assets increase in value over time, then we can add more signers, we can increase the threshold to match our security needs. But multi-sigs are also not awesome. So while multi-sigs have been widely adopted in other ecosystems, so if you look at things like Safe Wallet, $100 billion assets under management, 7 million multi-sigs. In the Polkadot ecosystem, there are a few things that we think are difficult to use. So first is multi-sig setup. To get these security advantages and features that I was talking about, you really need to set up your multi-sig in specific ways. Next is sharing data with signers. So to execute a transaction, you need to share things like call data with other signers. And this brings up the question of where are we going to share this data? But this is not the only kind of data. For the context needed to really approve transactions, you might want to know a description of the transaction. So what is this transaction all about? Or you might want to know who are these funds being sent to. So address book and contact information is important too. And then finally, using multi-sigs with dApps is limited in the current ecosystem. So you can't just use a multi-sig at the moment like any other account. And so today in the demo with Signet, we're going to show you how Signet solves for these problems. So we'll show you some typical multi-sig setups that an organization might have. We'll show you as well how Signet manages shared data between signers and options for increased privacy as well. And we'll go through how we connect Signet with dApps through the Talisman extension and what account abstraction means for Signet.
Yeah, so in an organization, this is something you might have. So you might have a payroll vault, right, a payroll multi-sig account that manages payroll every month. So this account may not have so much funds, right? Maybe just enough funds to pay your employees. So maybe it needs like a more linear security. But maybe you have a treasury vault that stores all of your funds and have lots of funds that are just sitting there. And you need a stricter security with more signers, but you don't want the funds to just sit there and do nothing. So you can have, let's say, a multi-sig that can use that funds for voting via the governance proxy. And then maybe you would also have some public-facing operations, like managing a non-pool that you don't want to use the same signers for your internal operation. So you would have a different vault for that. And so let's look at how that could look in Signet. So if we go to my payroll, is my internet working? If nothing breaks, it's not a demo. Yeah, so for example, I have a payroll vault here where I can have, this is you, and then you can have 3 other signers, for example, Chris, Clyde, William, and then you might not have so much funds here, so you only need like a 2 or 4 threshold. But then if we go to a treasury vault, this is where you would have all of your funds, so you might want more approvals before something gets sent out. So you can have a 4 or 5, and then different set of signers. But also you want to use the funds in this account to do other stuff, right? So we can have a governance vault that has a governance proxy to the same address, right? 5F1BM, 5F1BM. But then it cannot do things like send funds, right? So we have a UI that blocks it here, but really, if it can't happen on chain, it can't happen on chain, right? This is just a UI to tell you that you can't do it. But we can do, voting transactions, right? And then let's say I want to use a different account, right? That is completely different from my internal operations to manage my non-pool. Then I can switch to, different signer account. And then Signet would switch to all of the vaults that this new signer account have access to. And then we can go to, let's say, a non-pool vault that we have set up on Kusama that is managing a non-pool, pool 165. And you can manage your validators here. And so you may have noticed we have a lot of off-chain data, right? Like the name of your pool, of your vault, your transaction description. So we're going to talk a little bit about data sharing and privacy.
Yeah, and for this we're going to use a really typical example that lots of our clients do on a regular basis, which is like the monthly payroll from the payroll vault. And so, here are some of the fields that you'll see that we store off-chain, and we'll show you how this looks in Signet alongside the kind of on-chain operation. So starting with the vault, so it's quite easy to navigate to the payroll vault on Hydra because, of course, the vault name is one of the first kind of fields stored off-chain here. In terms of doing the monthly payroll, we might want to add into the shared address book here all of the kind of employees that might be known that we want to send funds to. And so typically in an organization, maybe in the finance team, there'll be someone who prepares a spreadsheet for the monthly payroll, but they might not be a signer of the multi-sig. So we have a collaborator role within Signet, which allows people to view all of the information for a vault, but to only be able to create draft transactions for the signers to review. So this is a kind of another off-chain area, and we got Chris, the collaborator, now is signed into Signet, and we're ready to do a multi-send transaction. And so with the multi-send interface, you can copy-paste the accounts and amounts over to Signet here. In review mode, you can look at these amounts in different kind of currency exchanges based on the CoinGecko API. For bigger files as well, you can import from CSV. So for people who are doing kind of hundreds of sends within the monthly payroll, they can do that. And then you see at the bottom here, what we've noticed from working with clients is that there's a lot of kind of validation and checks that happen along the way. So we want to look at things like what's the total roll-up of amount of sends and what's the total amount. So you can check that against the spreadsheet as well. And so if we go into review this transaction before we save it as a draft, you can see that based on the address book, it's going to detect those addresses, and you'll be able to see them in there. That's good if people are using the address book in full. They'll notice fairly quickly if there's a different address in there. We can also view the multi-sig call data or copy it in different formats, so you don't kind of have to leave Signet to go and do that in other tools. And then we've got all of the approvers down below too. And so that creates a draft transaction. Draft transactions are off-chain, and if you were to log in as a signer, you would see that as a draft transaction waiting to be approved. And so these are some of the fields that you kind of saw along the way, and these are the kind of things that are stored in our backend database.
And so I'll talk a little bit about how we are managing this, all of this data, right? So at its core, Signet uses the blockchain. We rely on the blockchain for its security. So whatever you cannot do on-chain, you just can't do on Signet, right? Like if you're a governance proxy, you just can't send funds out of an account. So what we do store in Signet is we have a backend and a database that stores all of the off-chain metadata that Glad has mentioned. We also have a front end. And so if you're a team who are concerned about data privacy, you don't want us to have all of this information, we have the option to self-host. We have all of the Docker files and everything. So if that's something you're interested in, just reach out to us. And then our front end just interacts directly with the multisig and proxy palettes and other on-chain operations. We also have a sub0 indexer for indexing all of your transaction history. So whatever you do, we will index it and they will show up in your history here. So something I want to show that I thought was kind of cool was also that if you have used some kind of multisig tools before outside of Signet, we will still load those transactions for you, so you can easily bring over all of the things you have outside of Signet into Signet.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about account abstraction and what it means for Signet. And this is like one of our really fun features to build with the broader Talisman team. So this is all about how we use multisigs within the Talisman extension so that we can use multisigs with dApps to craft transactions.
So I'll just go to so for this demo, I will be using the staking dashboard. So I'm going to show you how you can use your multisig to interact with the staking dashboard, which is really cool. So I'll use this same non-pool vault that we have. So what you can do is go to the Talisman extension, add account, and then we have the option to connect to Signet. And then if you're using a self-hosted version, you can replace this URL with your self-hosted Signet. Otherwise, we would just connect. And this would bring you to this screen where you can select the vaults that you want to import into Talisman extension. So we'll choose this one, continue, confirm. Right, and so then we can now have a view of all of the things that the extension allows us to see, right? Portfolio value and everything. But also, if we just go to the staking dashboard, you can see. I mean, I have this connected already, but so you can see that we have the non-pool multi-sig account imported, basically injected into the staking dashboard, right? We're here, and then just like that, we can use all of the features that the staking dashboard offers. So, for example, we can try to withdraw our rewards. Submit. And the extension will prompt us to approve this transaction in Signet. We can also check the exact call data that the dApp is trying to get your multisig to sign. So in this case, it's a non-pool claim payout extrinsic. We can review it. And so this is the call data that Signet would call for your multisig, which is a proxy call. And then you can save it as a draft, or you can approve it and send the transaction on-chain. And so this is staking dashboard, but really we've tried it with a lot of different dApps, like even PJS apps, Acer dashboard or whatever. And so it just works with any dApps that supports connecting your EOA accounts.
And so in terms of account abstraction, I guess for us the first step was really thinking about multisigs as just like any other account. How do we give it that utility? And then the next kind of level up from that, if we go back to that kind of diagram earlier of a typical organization might have a number of multisigs, how do we also kind of zoom out to look at and provide people with an organizational view of the multisigs that they do have? So we're going to share a new feature we've been working on. We have an early wireframe that we're kind of sharing and socializing with clients at the moment to get feedback, but this is where it shows you the organizational view. So we're going to dive into, the Figma file here. And so what you can see is this is Signet, but viewing it across 5 different vaults here. And so we can see how many signers. We've also got how many the kind of like subcategories. So you might group your vaults into different subcategories and also across different networks. You can see how many signers are involved across all of the vaults and multisigs in your organization. You can see the total balance, so looking at kind of your portfolio across all the multisigs, and you can see, how is that represented across different asset types. In terms of looking at kind of the recent view, we've got, this ins and outs graphs, which shows, what is the bulk of the transfers in and out of the accounts in total over time, as well as the most recent transactions. So, this serves as a place for people who want to drill down into more of the detail. And then over to the right, you can see what you saw in the rest of Signet, but aggregated across all of the multisigs. So we can see what are all of the outstanding pending transactions, draft transactions, and history. And so in terms of things like access control, we're extending out things like the collaborator access and working with organizations on who would have access to these kinds of views, whether you're a signer or not of some of these different vaults. But this is a good kind of executive view across all of the different vaults. And then in terms of further drilling down, you can go into the specific, for example, the kind of non-pool vault here, and start to look at that in the next level of detail. So that's some of the things kind of to come. And today we've talked a lot about Signet. So Signet was really built and designed for enterprise and institutions, people that have 4, 10, hundreds of multi-sigs that they need to manage. And this is why we've got options like self-hosting available and organizational management. We're building out reporting extracts for tax reporting, P&L, all of these kinds of things that people ask for. But we have another product line coming really soon, and that is the Polkadot multi-sig. And so you can see from the screenshot here, it's powered by Signet, but unlike Signet, it is a free and open a multi-sig for the ecosystem. And it's an open platform the way we're building it as well. So for people who want to extend the functionality of a multi-sig or integrate it with it, we've already got an SDK for people who want to add their dApp to it. But similar to kind of how MetaMask Snaps works, you know, for people who want to integrate in a way that maybe touches different parts of the UI, we're super interested to chat with people about that. So if that's you, definitely come and see us afterwards. And it launches in April. And so in April, when we launch, everybody in the ecosystem is going to be able to use it. So we're pretty excited to have that offering as well. And so thank you very much to everyone. Please get in touch if you want to learn more. We've got details here, and the QR code is for, you know, if you want to sign up to the Signet closed beta kind of release that we've got running at the moment. Definitely do that. And yeah, follow us on X. We'll be announcing the launch of the Polkadot multisig soon.
Thank you so much, Glide and Chris. I think we have time for some questions if anyone wants to ask.
Hey, thanks you for a great presentation. I have a question regarding self-hosted version of Signet. So do you have some sort of authentication system to prevent unauthorized access if URL is leaked to somebody outside of organization, for example?
Yeah, you can.
I'm sorry, it was off. I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, do you have some sort of authorization system for self-hosted version of a Signet in case URL of self-hosted version is leaked to outside of the organization?
Yes, yes. So we use Sign with Substrate for all of the authentication stuff. So for example, if I disconnect all of my Signet accounts, right, and I try to, you know, reconnect, I would have to sign in to use the backend. So if you're self-hosting a backend, you don't want anyone to be able to just, you know, pull data from your backend, right? And so we use JWT token to authenticate a user after the sign with Substrate. Once you're signed in, then you would have a JWT token that would grant you access to your database.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for this presentation. It's a very, very interesting tool. My question is, what type of accounts can be used with Signet? Can it be a Ledger account, a Polkadot Vault account? Can it be a multisig or a proxy itself? Can these accounts be signers?
I'll start with the multi-sig. So at the beginning, I talked a bit about the kind of concept of a vault. So we've kind of made the decision from a design perspective that we really think the proxied account and the multi-sig together is what kind of is really powerful about the multi-sig. So we can't import just the multi-sig into Signet, but it's also a good opportunity to, you know, it's really easy to create a new vault within Signet and kind of establish that proxied account on multi-sig. Maybe you want to answer the others around
yeah, so
vault, etc.
Yeah, so yes, Ledger we support. I think you need certain version of Ledger to be able to sign a raw message, so you can sign in. So yes, we support Ledger accounts. So in terms of multi-sig and proxy account, we don't yet support like very nested structure, right? Because I think, you know, multi-sig plus proxy is really a very kind of complicated user experience, right? So we're trying to make it simple, and so it's definitely on our roadmap to think about, you know, how do we make it easy for like a nested kind of setup.
Yeah, and you saw with the we had the vault there that was a non-pool controller. So we've got kind of a branch we're working on at the moment, which is with some of the more kind of exotic setups that people actually use. We really want to prioritize it about what do people actually use first.
Hello, thank you for the demo. I have one question about potential changes in votes. Let's say we created a vote with 4 signers, and then there's a decision maybe made by one person, maybe more to change it, to, for example, have 3 signers. Is it possible to do this, or I need to create a new vote?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can show you very quickly. So, for example, if I go, so I have 3 signers here, right, like you mentioned, and if I want to add a new signer, it's all myself.
You can add me if you like. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, also, if you're from like the LF0 ecosystem, we support A0 ID resolution, so I can just do like client.a0, and it will resolve the address for me. I can add the signer. I can change the threshold if I want to. Review. And so what we're doing here is we are removing your multisigs control to the proxied account, and then we are adding the new multisig address as the proxy of the proxied account, right? So you can see it's a add proxy and remove proxy. And then if I just approve this, I think I have gas. Right, and then it would show up in your pending transactions, and then if I just, I think I need to reject this one first. Okay.
And so this is why we have the proxied account. So we can keep that same proxied account, change the signer configuration, but still have that same proxied account, and just change those proxy relationships between.
Yeah, so we have 3 signers on this Signet T0 vault. If I, oh, I need to connect the other one. And yeah, so now we have 4 signers, a different multisig setup basically, that are still on the same proxied address.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm also curious about like one other thing, because right now, as I understand, there is some authority deciding who can sign it and decide to add a new person or remove someone. Let's say I would like to make a vote. Then for example, there are like 5 funders, and for example, 3 of them decided to remove that one. But this one, of course, doesn't want to be removed.
Okay.
So is it some kind of, do you have some mechanisms of voting about adding new members, or in that case, it's necessary to create a new vote? And what about, for example, money inside?
Yeah, I think that it comes probably initially to what's the threshold. So if you have 5 signers and actually you really need 4 people to agree, then you really probably need to have an approval threshold of 4 of 5, and I think that probably covers the kind of main situation rather than needing to add necessarily a new vault. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think we're out of time, but maybe you can talk to us later if you.
Yeah, we're happy to go through all of the details with you. We love it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks everyone.